Hello everyone, I'm going to be making a couple cooking videos because I'm still waiting on some soap deliveries. So I figured, why not? I like to cook, I like to eat, so let's get started. So first we have our New York strip steak right here. Definitely my favorite cut of steak. Of course filet mignon is up there as well, but you can't go wrong with a nice New York strip. So this has been sitting out for a little bit just to get it closer to room temperature. You do not want to put it straight on the pan if it's been cold because it's going to burn. So we have this here. What I'm going to do before I season this is put some olive oil in the pan right here, and we're going to put it up to high. Alright, so a good amount of olive oil right there. That's going to be heating up. In the meantime, let's season our steak. So I first just like to start off with some basic stuff. Now normally I would like to use some actual herbs fresh from a produce department from a store, but I didn't have time today, so we're just going to use the ground stuff. So we're going to start with some ground thyme. I'm going to sprinkle some of that on top. Not too much, but just to get some of that flavor locked in there. So we're going to go with some thyme on both sides. Alright, after that, we are going to do, this is where I like to differ a little bit. So, I prefer rubbed sage. I think there's just a whole lot more flavor that comes out of this. So we're going to do some rubbed sage. Each side again. Rubbed sage. This stuff is amazing. Alright, so we got some herbs. Now let's get a little kick here. A lot of people do not use ground white pepper because it doesn't necessarily have as much flavor as black pepper, but it has a nice little sharp kick to it, and I think it's perfect for a good steak. So let's put some ground white pepper on here. You don't need too much, but a nice little sprinkle. Depends how hot you like your steak. It's a nice heat. It has a nice heat to it. I think sometimes it's a little better than red pepper flakes, depending on what you're making. You know, I wouldn't put that in a pasta or something, but for a steak, it's perfect. Alright, so we got all that on there. Okay, so next up, I do like to add a little bit of steak seasoning. Just some Montreal steak seasoning, or whatever your favorite is. Not too much, but it does add a nice little bit of flavor to it. So let's get a little bit on there. We don't want to add too many different things, but it doesn't hurt to add a little bit of steak seasoning if you like it. But that's not necessary. Alright, so we have our steak. It's pretty well seasoned here. But we need one more thing before we get it in the pan as this thing heats up, because we want a nice sear on this thing. That's like pretty much the most important part. So, one more thing we're going to do, we are going to add some salt. Now, you can use sea salt, pink salt, whatever you want, but for my steaks, I like to use a little more expensive salt. This stuff is Maine sea salt, straight from the ocean, and it's nice. It's a little bit bigger flakes, but it's really, really flavorful. If you've never had like fresh sea salt, you're missing out. So we're gonna get a little bit of that rubbed in there, that nice salty flavor. There we go. Perfect Maine sea salt. And it looks like our pan is just about ready for that steak. You can see it's getting pretty smoky over here. Let's get the fan turned on low. So here we have it. Alright, I think it's good to go. So we're gonna set this in nice and easy. The oil is a little bit uneven in there, but we'll just have to work with it. So here's our steak. We're gonna have it in for about a minute, minute and a half on both sides. There we go. Trying to keep that olive oil nice and even on there to give it that nice sear. And in about a minute, we're gonna flip it. All right, so we're about to flip our steak now. Let's look at the sear, see how it is. Oh yeah, look at that. It does look a little bit dark here. That's not from the steak burning. That's just from our sage. The sage does get pretty dark, but it's not burnt, so we're still okay here. All right, now that we flipped our steak, I do have some crushed fresh garlic cloves I want to toss in here. Flip those garlic cloves in the pan. You gotta love some good garlic flavor. The fresher the better. So we're gonna have this in here for about another minute on high. And then we're gonna flip it on its side. This side of the steak has a lot more fat on it, so in about 40 seconds we are going to flip it and see if we can burn some of that fat off, give it some more extra flavor. This is already looking pretty good though. This side looks pretty good. Alright, we're going to flip it. Now I'm going to turn this down to a little lower than medium heat. We got our good sear. Let that sit like that for just about 30 seconds. We want the pan to cool down a little bit because when we put our butter in, we don't want it to burn. Just move this steak over a little bit, right in the center of the pan here. Okay, so I waited a little bit longer to do this part. Normally I would have some rosemary, I would toss it right in there. I don't have rosemary with me, but I do have organic rosemary pieces. I didn't want to put that in at first because this stuff will burn pretty quickly. So now that our pan is on low heat and slowly cooling down, we can start to put some rosemary in here. You can see it's still smoking pretty good, but we're definitely cooling down. So let's get some rosemary tossed on here. This stuff is going to give a great flavor and also a great fragrance to your steak. You can put a good amount of rosemary in there. Alright, there we go. So we are good on the rosemary. Let's get our butter in here now. I'm going to start with some butter right on top of the steak. And this is going to melt right into it and give it a lot of juice and flavor. And I'm also going to put a little piece on the bottom of the pan here. And we're just going to melt this butter. It's going to seep right into the steak. Again, we are on low heat. It's going to get a little dark right here. That's just from the different seasonings. But that's not from our butter burning. Okay. So let's get this thing moved around here. I'm going to take the butter off. Put the steak over. This thing is still sizzling. Our butter here. Butter back on. You just want to baste it a little bit. You can see we're already cooked pretty well over here, but you just want to make sure you get that nice caramelization on the outside. You want it to be that nice dark brown. You don't want any gray in there. Alright, we're going to turn our heat off. We should be good. Let this butter just seep in here a little bit more. This is a little bit darker than I usually have it on the outside. But that's okay. It's really more important about what's on the inside. So, even for a steak. Alright, we're going to take a pause here and we're going to let this sit for about 10 minutes. We have the final result right here. So here's our steak. We're just going to add a couple more things. So first I want to add some freshly ground black pepper to it. And then the final thing we're going to add, I like to add a little more salt because I love salt. And here we have some lava salt. This is straight from Iceland. And this stuff is really, really good, but you can use whatever you want. So let's get some of this on here. All right, now we have our steak. The moment of truth when we cut into it. So let's see, I'm just gonna cut right down the middle because I think it's a little fatty on both ends still. See how we're looking? Oh yeah, and there we go. Let's just cut a piece off here. Look at that, beautiful color. Nice dark sear. This is a nice rare center. I like mine medium rare or rare. You can cook yours longer if you like it cooked more than that, but you don't want to cook it too much because then you're gonna end up with a well done steak, and that's no good. But you can just hear, you hear that sound? That's a good crust on your steak. Look at that beautiful color. So there it is, a perfect New York strip steak. And I can tell you, I'm gonna try this, but I can assure you that this is perfect. Just bursting with flavor.